Ever feel like you could use a little ancient wisdom to navigate, well, our modern world?
Yeah.
We're diving deep into the teachings of Confucius on this deep dive. And trust me, this isn't just like, for philosophy professors or something.
Good.
We're going to uncover some surprisingly practical advice you can actually use, like, right now. From this book, Confucius, The School of Life. Have you seen this one?
Oh, absolutely. It's amazing how relevant his ideas on things like ethics and leadership still are, even over 2,500 years later.
Right. And I have to say, the first thing that really struck me was how little we actually know about Confucius, like the man himself.
Yeah.
Like his life story is this total mystery.
It's true. We have these like fragments, snippets of where he lived and what he might have done. We know he was born in China somewhere around 551 BC.
Okay.
And he may have studied with the legendary Lao Tzu, even held some government positions. But his real power, the thing that's lasted all these centuries, it's the legacy of his teachings, the wisdom passed down generation to generation. He actually saw himself as a transmitter, not the, inventor.
So more like he was refining a timeless blueprint for living rather than creating a whole new one.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the Analects. Those collections of his sayings his followers put together.
Right.
Are these like the 10 Commandments of Confucianism, or are we talking something different?
Not quite the 10 Commandments. The Analects aren't really about like rigid rules. They're more like prompts for deeper thinking. I think of them as like little sparks.
Okay.
Anecdotes and observations that kind of get you thinking, spark that self-reflection.
Yeah.
Like there's this great story about the stable fire.
Oh, yeah. That one really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Confucius hears about the stable that burned down, and you know what he asks first? Was anyone hurt?
Not the horses.
He doesn't even mention the horses.
Exactly. And that just perfectly illustrates how much he emphasized human life over, material possessions. I think it's a powerful prompt, even for us now. What would our first instinct be? What does that say about our own priorities?
It's a good gut check, that's for sure. And this kind of leads us to a concept that I gotta admit seemed a little jarring, thinking about it in our modern world, and that's the importance he puts on ceremony, or as they call it, lick.
Yeah, it does seem counterintuitive. We're all about informality, spontaneity, just do your own thing, But Confucius is reminding us there's this whole other kind of power in deliberate action, in understanding how we behave and how that impacts other people.
So how does that actually play out in our lives? Give me like a modern day example of lick.
Okay, so think about a firm handshake.
Okay.
Or a well-timed thank you note.
Oh, yeah.
Even that feeling you get when someone acknowledges you, really sees you when you're in a crowded room.
Yeah.
Those small rituals, those little things we do, when we do them with intention, that's where they have a huge impact. That's live at work, creating clarity and respect in all these little interactions.
It's like those subtle cues. They say, I see you, I value you, but without needing a million words. Just bam,
Precisely. And speaking of respect, that leads us to another one of those core Confucian concepts, filial piety.
Yeah.
Or zhao.
Okay, so this is where things get interesting. Confucius was like really big on respecting your elders.
He was. And some of his ideas about specifically how children should obey their parents, they might seem a little extreme today. He really emphasized obedience, even when, you don't agree.
Yeah, not exactly meshing with our modern emphasis on you do you individuality.
Right. But even if we don't agree with blind obedience, I think there's still a really valuable takeaway.
Like what?
Confucius challenges us to really remember the sacrifices our parents made, and to approach them with a sense of gratitude, even in disagreement.
So even if we don't always see eye to eye, remembering where we came from and who helped us get here, that's important.
Yes.
It's about recognizing the role that family plays in making us, us.
Absolutely. And this respect for those who came before us is not just limited to family. Confucius believed deeply in understanding our place, within a larger social fabric. He felt like when a society really works, it's because, everyone kind of understands their own roles and their responsibilities, and it's all within this larger system.
Okay, I can see how that might have made sense, way back then in ancient China. But doesn't that kind of clash with how we see things today? I mean, we're all about equality.
Oh, absolutely.
Questioning authority, all that.
Yeah, it's a fair point. We've definitely moved away from these rigid hierarchies. But, to be fair to Confucius, he wasn't advocating for, just blindly obeying. He definitely recognized that certain people, through experience, through wisdom, through the position they've earned, they deserve a certain level of, well, deference.
Mm-hmm.
He actually used this kind of cool analogy to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah.
The wind and the grass.
What's the wind in the grass? I don't think I know that one.
So just like, the wind blows.
Yeah.
What happens to the grass?
It
bends. That's right. We should be open to learning from those who are, maybe in those positions of authority.
So it's less about being totally submissive. It's
Right.
about recognizing we don't always have the answers.
Yeah.
And sometimes just kind of listening to people who have a bit more experience than us, been there, done that, that can be really valuable.
Precisely. And speaking of variable knowledge, Confucius was really big on Z, the pursuit of knowledge.
Okay.
It's actually one of his 5 constant virtues.
Oh, right, right.
But, and this is the big but, he didn't stop there.
Uh-oh.
Because he also believed that knowledge without action, well, it's basically meaningless.
It's kind of like that old saying, right?
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, but only when you use it. It's not enough to just load your brain up with a bunch of facts like trivia night or something.
Right.
What matters is, well, what are you doing with all that knowledge, So how did Confucius see that whole thing? The knowledge versus action dilemma.
So for him, true wisdom, that was about aligning what you do with what you know. It's about striving to actually live by those virtues. It wasn't enough to just have them memorized. You actually had to embody them,
He walked the walk, in other words.
Exactly.
Okay, so that makes me think about something else from this book. Confucius, he had some pretty strong opinions on leadership. And I don't just mean bosses and stuff like CEOs and politicians. He was talking about something bigger, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He thought real leadership transcended those titles and roles. It was all about inspiring people through your actions, It was about integrity.
Yeah.
Compassion, leading by example.
Yeah.
That was huge for him.
So less about giving orders and more about inspiring people to follow because they genuinely respect you.
Yes.
It's that whole actions speak louder than words thing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He was convinced that a true leader wouldn't need to resort to force or pressure. People would want to follow them willingly because their actions would speak for themselves.
It's kind of refreshing, to think about that, especially, these days, right? Because so much of what we think of as leadership, it's all about dominance.
Oh, yeah.
Control.
For sure.
This is the opposite of that.
It is. And it kind of brings us back to his emphasis on Ren, another one of those 5 constant virtues we were talking about.
Okay.
Ren is tough to translate, but it's about benevolence, compassion, that essential humanness we all have. He saw that as the key to a good life.
Okay, so Ren sounds like a pretty important concept to unpack here, if we really want to get what Confucius was all about.
Totally. Cultivating Ren for Confucius, that was essential for, really living a good life. It's about recognizing, hey, we're all human, right? We're all connected in a way. It's about treating everyone with empathy, with respect, and then working towards a more harmonious world.
So it's about taking that compassion, that we might feel for ourselves and spreading it outwards.
Precisely.
So it includes everyone.
And it's not just being nice. It's deeper than that. Confucius believed that when you act with Ren, you're doing what's right, even when it's difficult, because it aligns with your values.
You're not cutting corners when it comes to Ren, huh?
No way. It's about making that choice consistently to do the right thing, even if nobody's watching.
Especially if nobody's watching.
Especially then.
Right, exactly. Now, that makes me think, Confucius wasn't just hyper-focused on, individual people being moral. He was also really interested in how society worked as a whole, right?
Yeah, he believed that a well-ordered society, that was crucial for people to thrive.
Okay.
To reach their full potential. He really saw this strong link between, personal virtue, being a good person, and a just, harmonious society.
Okay, I'm intrigued now. So explain that connection for me. How did he see those two things, as so interconnected?
So Confucius, he thought if individuals focused on building those virtues, like we were talking about, Ren, Li, Ge, that would naturally lead to a more just and harmonious society. Because people would treat each other right. They'd understand their own role. And they'd all be working together for the greater good.
So it's kind of like this ripple effect, right? Individual growth and the well-being of society, they're totally tied together.
Exactly. He saw a really strong connection there, especially between the moral character of its leaders and how healthy that society was as a whole.
Which leads us to his views on education. He was a big believer in education, right? Not just for, like, the rich and powerful.
Yeah.
He thought everyone should have access. He believed everyone should have the opportunity to learn and grow, not just the privileged few. It's a pretty radical idea for his time, wasn't it?
It was incredibly progressive for his time. He really believed that, education, it was a pathway. It could help people move up in the world.
Oh, wow.
And he also believed that when you invest in education, the whole society benefits for, like, generations. It's a long game.
Yeah, plant those seeds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for Confucius, it wasn't just about memorizing a bunch of facts.
Right, there's got to be more to it than that. So what kind of education did he have in mind?
He was all about this holistic education.
Yeah.
It was about, developing your mind, but also cultivating a virtuous character, building well-rounded people.
Okay.
People who would contribute to society in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So intellect is important, but he also emphasized things like empathy, integrity,
Yeah.
those core values.
It's like that saying, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.
Yes.
Confucius was all about, like, igniting that fire in everyone. That love of learning, that desire to be better. And it's honestly kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, how these teachings from all those centuries ago,
Right.
they still have such a huge impact, especially in East Asia. I mean, wow.
It's amazing. I think it really speaks to the power of his ideas. And maybe some of them, they seem a bit, rigid or old-fashioned today.
Yeah.
But those core values, the things he kept coming back to, like family, respect, knowledge, that connection between, like, being a good person and a good society, that resonates. Like he was tapping into something universal, something that goes beyond time and culture.
Right. Like, here we are centuries later, and those ideas are still offering a guide. It's like he's giving us permission to, like, I don't know, slow down a little.
Yeah.
Actually think about our lives. Focus on building those strong relationships.
It's refreshing.
It is. It's like contributing to something bigger than just, me, myself, and I. And in a world that often feels, like, completely chaotic and totally uncertain, I think those ideas are more relevant, honestly, than ever. Like, maybe deep down, we're all kind of searching for that timeless wisdom,
He reminds us that this whole thing, like trying to live a good life,
Yeah.
pursuing wisdom, it's not like a destination.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
You're always learning, always growing.
Exactly. And it's the small stuff, too, like just being a little kinder, showing respect, acting with integrity. Those little things make a difference.
It's about taking those small steps consistently.
So well said. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Confucius, his world, his ideas, I think I'm left with this question of, well, how can we actually live this stuff? How can we take even just a little bit of his wisdom and apply it to our own lives, make it real?
Right. It's the big question, isn't it? What would it look like to bring a little more Ren into, our daily interactions?
Yeah.
How can we practice lay in our relationships, even when things get messy? These are questions, honestly, I think we could all benefit from pondering. And hey, on that note, thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery. And remember, as Confucius himself said, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. So true. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep growing.